Hey everyone, it's Mojaxx back in the DJ City UK lab. Today with my review of the Allen Heath Xone DB4 mixer. Now there's a story to this review. Basically a few months back I played at my regular Saturday residency. They had hired in one of these for Paul Wolford, who is an amazing house and techno DJ and producer. He'd used it on the Friday night. It was still in the building, so naturally, me being me, I was like, yeah, I want to use that, let's plug it in. Used it for one set and realized two things. Firstly, this mixer is pretty awesome. Secondly, you cannot learn this mixer in the space of a 4-hour set. It's not going to happen. This is a massively complex piece of machinery. There's so much going on in here. So it's really not for, turning up in casual use. If you're going to get the best out of this, you've got to learn it. So that's what I've done. I got one from Allen Heath sent through for review. I've had it for 4 months. I've been using it in the lab, been taking it on the road, and I'm pretty confident I've got, the ins and outs pretty much sorted out with this now. But it took a while. It really, really did. There's one group of DJs, just to get this out of the way, that this is definitely not going to work for, and that is open format, cutting and scratching. Nah, not going to happen. The crossfader in itself is not great for that. To start with, you've got a big long cut in on the crossfader. They offer a pro crossfade as an option. You can upgrade, or you could put an inner fader in there as well. That's also something you could do, but unfortunately, the effects activation switches are either side of the fader. So even if you're just doing basic, chopping stuff up and cutting stuff in, you're going to find yourself activating those switches. I do a lot when I'm using the crossfader. So if you want anything, if you want the crossfader for anything but simple, stabbing stuff in or for blending, this mixer probably won't be for you. But if you are a house DJ, a techno DJ, a disco DJ, something like that, you're all about the blend and layering and working with the sound, this thing could well blow your mind. It's a very, very special design. So there's a lot to talk about. Let's get into it. My original cut of this review was a 30-minute sprawling thing going through all the features of the mixer, and there are many in depth. But on reflection, that seemed kind of pointless. This is not a new mixer. It's been around since the start of the decade, and there are plenty of videos out there doing that already. So I've decided to pull back and just talk about my impressions of the unit. Firstly, I'll talk about the sound and build quality. Unlike the fully analog earlier Xone mixers like the 92, the DB4 is fully digital. This has a lot of functional benefits, which we'll get to, but doesn't have a negative impact on the sound whatsoever. In fact, I'm comfortable saying this is one of the nicest sounding mixers I've ever heard, both in the studio and in the club. The processing, along with the effects, takes cues from Allen Heath's long history of producing pro live audio equipment, and besides sounding great out of the box, there are a ton of options for actually controlling the sound output, way beyond what you usually find on a DJ mixer. The huge array of options found in the setup screen really is unparalleled. You can truly tweak this mixer to work in pretty much any way that you desire. The screen itself is an OLED panel and looks really nice in all kinds of lighting conditions. There are 4 analog inputs, with 2 and 3 being switchable to phono. The preamps in here are really lovely, and if 2 turntables aren't enough, you can also switch 1 and 4 to phono with a software preamp, which also sounds great. There's a ton of headroom on the inputs and the same on the outputs too. There are also 4 dedicated digital inputs that work great with CDJs. It would be nice to see a few extra switchable analog inputs, but I suspect that would start to complicate the Matrix input system rather too much. There's an extra mic line switchable channel off to the side, which can be assigned to Matrix input 1 if you need more control than the 2-channel EQ provides, or if you want to send it to the effects. Outputs are covered with XLR and RCA main outs, and a booth monitor on balance jacks. I'd like to see a 3rd analog output for session purposes, but I can live with that as there is a digital one to use. Queuing is fully covered with a split queue option in the settings. As with all the Xones, the master queue level comes before the master output knob, making mixing in the headphones easy at all volume levels. The placement of the headphone sockets could be improved, and I'd like to see a front mounted one as an extra option. Built-in mixer audio interfaces can sometimes be a disappointment, but in terms of sound quality and volume, the DB4's punches just as hard as the analog and digital inputs. It offers 4 stereo ins and outs, and the mixer is club kit compatible with Serato DJ, and that performs really well. It also works great with Traktor Pro, but is not compatible with Traktor Scratch DVS. It's just not certified for that. One thing I have to mention is that Allen Heath software and firmware support for the DB4 has been a little bit patchy over the years. There were ongoing issues with USB ports on OS X for a long time, for example, but at this point they've just released new firmware and drivers for OS X El Capitan, which some of their competitors haven't managed yet. and the USB 3 issues appear to be resolved. So I'll just say I hope it's a sign of renewed vigour on this front from Allen Heath and that it continues from here on. The USB port on the top right of the mixer is for performing those firmware updates and also offers the ability to save and load your personal settings for the DB4 onto a USB stick. It's good to note that even without specifically saving, your settings are retained in the mixer's internal memory between power cycles. Build quality is totally solid. I've been using this unit for 4 months and it looks as good as new. I always give Rain a hard time over using plastic pots, so it's only fair that I do the same to Allen Heath. I've always preferred metal pots, but I'm starting to wonder if these companies know something that I don't. Certainly I've had no problem with the feel or durability of these as they've worn in. The up faders feel very nice in use and have 3 different curve settings. Like the crossfader, there's nothing for turntablists here, but all other tastes are covered. One exceptional use of the digital architecture here is the ability to swap the effects wet and dry knobs with the up faders, turning the DB4 into a rotary mixer. I love that idea, although a slightly more linear fader curve on the smoothest setting would sweeten it all the more. You might notice that this DB4 looks somewhat different from a stock unit. After using it in a club environment, one problem became immediately apparent. The black on black colour scheme might look badass, but in the dark of a booth, the whole mixer just disappears. It's like it's deliberately camouflaging itself. Ironically, the illumination on the EQ knobs makes them stand out beautifully, but as for the rest, I had to get Cooler Caps to send me a kit for the DB4 straight away, and it made a huge difference to the usability of the mixer in the dark. Speaking of the EQ knobs, those indicate one of the cleverest features on here. They are called Trimodal EQs, offering 3 settings which can be switched on a per channel basis. The first is a regular isolator mode, which many DJs will love. I generally prefer the less aggressive EQ mode though. The third mode switches the EQ to a pair of filters, high pass at the bottom and low pass at the top. With a shared resonance control for both, this offers a really interesting way of working and shaping your sound. It was quite hard for me to use as I'm constantly using different gear, so the muscle memory never quite came with it. But if the DB4 is your sole mixer, I suspect you may well gravitate towards this mode. It's very powerful and has a slightly different sound to the traditional zone filters found either side of the crossfader. Those are as cool as ever, naturally, with a selection of different modes themselves. Can't go wrong with a zone filter really, even if these are, again, digital versions of the classic analog design. The effects are one of the big selling points of the DB4, and rightly so. It's all internal, there is no send and return loop, but at no point did I ever feel like I needed one. There are tons of available effects, all of which really are of studio quality. You have a separate effect unit for each channel in the mixer, which is dope enough on its own, but when combined with the input matrix goes to whole new levels of madness. Besides the actual effects, there's also a loop facility on each channel. This can be used in a momentary or a latching fashion and always captures the same length of audio regardless of what you set it to, so you can change the length after the fact. It sounds great and can be enhanced further still by hooking up one of the Allen Heath X-Link controllers, the K1 or the K2, which lets you alter the wet and dry of the loop. It's heavy stuff. If you've ever seen any of my videos before, you might know by now I'm somewhat obsessed by delays, and the ones on here go way beyond anything I've ever found on another DJ mixer. Each effect is controlled in a similar way, with the top knob usually controlling frequency and the lower one controlling the beat quantization. You've got reverbs, resonators, modulation effects and damage effects, distortion and the like. Some of these go way beyond anything I'll ever use, but for gritty techno sets they'll be a joy. You can set up the effects to route however you want, pre or post fader, pre or post EQ, and in a standard or a send kind of style. My preferred setup is the hybrid mode, which when you get to the end of the dry and wet knob, turns into fully wet. Now it really comes into its own when you get the matrix routing involved. By assigning an input to multiple channels, or even all 4 if you like, you can have a combination of the original dry signal with other fully wet affected signals, captured loops, the lot. It's one aspect of the mixer which can easily catch you out if you're not on point, but is incredibly powerful when you start to work it hard. The only downside to the effects setup is the beat detection. Whilst the analysis of incoming audio is as good as anything you'll find, that really is the only option for assigning BPM. You can tap the tempo and you've got MIDI clock sync there as well, but as a rule, it's just detecting automatically. It's fine with 4 to the floor, house and techno, but often loses its way during breakdowns and with broken beat kind of stuff. You can lock it, but that's just another thing to remember, and whilst an incorrect BPM reading might not have a drastic impact on some effects, it will definitely mess with the mixer's loop function. I'd love the ability to dial in a BPM manually like you can on the Pioneer DJM range. The ability to sync the effects to MIDI clock works superbly with Traktor, highlighting again what a shame it is that Native Instruments haven't, for whatever reason, certified the DB4 for Traktor Scratch. It's a real shame. Like other club kit mixers, the DB4's effects don't sync directly to the BPM in Serato DJ, which is also a pity. For me, the most killer software setup with the DB4 is going to be Traktor, with either X1s, D2s, or maybe CDJs in HID mode. Another great software option would be to hook up and control Traktor via the K1 or K2 controllers, hook it all in through the X-Link port on the back of the DB4, and that would mean you only need one USB to hook up to your laptop, and you've got the whole thing running together. Feeding that BPM engine with the MIDI clock, it's going to be a seamless experience. Having a DVS option for that would be the icing on the cake. One little bonus is that the DB4 does come with a nice little padded bag to actually carry it around in. You know, they clearly are intending for you to take this on the road. I did swap it out for a Magma control case in most of my testing, but it's a nice little touch which a lot of manufacturers don't think about. So let's wrap this up then, okay? The Xone DB4 is not for everyone. For starters, I don't think it's really an open format kind of mixer. Even with an upgraded crossfader in there, you're still going to have the issue of the effects button placement and so on. It's never going to be the best for that kind of use. You know, it's usable. I've used it in all kinds of different sets, but ultimately this is a house and techno and disco kind of mixer. That's what this is about. It's also too complicated for a lot of DJs. You know, a lot of DJs want something far simpler than this, and the more you get to know this mixer, the more complicated in some ways it gets. Because as soon as you start really getting into those full-on features of, right, I'm just going to send the same deck to 3 channels on the matrix, I'm going to do a loop over here, an effect over here, I'm going to cut this frequency here, it gets really complicated. The more you get to know it, the more stuff you want to do, and you've really got to be on point with this. You've got to be thinking about what you're doing with this mixer all the time. It is very unforgiving, you know. So from that point of view, yeah, not going to be for everyone still. It's also very expensive. You know, it's $2,800 street price when I've been checking just before making this video. It seems to fluctuate with the exchange rates, but you know, you're talking well over 2,000 bucks. This is a top of the line mixer. I don't think it's bad value though. You know, I think you're getting a lot for your money compared to the competition. You know, there's a few different mixers out there at this kind of price, and this is definitely on a par with those in terms of quality. You've got so much in terms of the effects built in, and the power of it is fantastic. So I don't think it's bad value, but it is very expensive. So again, not for everyone. But if you're looking for a mixer like this, which offers you all this kind of power to work with and to really mess with your music and do some crazy stuff with it, then the DB4 is an absolute weapon, and it's a joy to use. If you've got that focus in the booth, if you've got that, you know, that game face on, and you're really going for it and playing multiple sources of house and techno, it's fantastic. It's a great experience, and it grows with you. The more you learn about it, the more you get a handle on what it can do, it just gets more and more exciting. So yeah, I really, really love the DB4. If you are the kind of person who's looking for a mixer like this and it's gonna work for you, you will not be disappointed. It really is a weapon. So there we go. Thank you very much for watching today. Make sure you subscribe for all our future tips, tricks, and product reviews. I'll see you soon.